Hello everyone, welcome back at my next video regarding the history vocab and all the vocabulary around, and apologizing for having a little bit longer break, but I was busy and I think all the people had a really fun time during the summertime, so now we can all focus back on education, studying, learning, and reading some articles regarding the history. I think I finished with P, and pardon was the last word and term. The next one is patriarch. Patriarch is the male head of family or a tribe. We still live more or less with patriarchal societies, even in modern Western world. Patriarch was male head, and we know from the kingdoms and from all these empires that usually the firstborn son or the male family was the heir to the throne. So actually the patriarchal society, patriarchy, is very strong. I think it will take next maybe 1,000 years until it will be completely wiped out, or maybe never. So patriarch. The next one is perspective. Perspective is a way of regarding situations or topics. What does it mean? It means that how we look at situations, how we look at some strategy or at the life or philosophy of life. What is the perspective? How we go, which direction we are heading to or from. Poll is the counting of votes as in an election. So poll means that actually how many votes got some candidates. So a poll doesn't mean primarily in the elections. It's as an election. Poll we can do also in other candidature or competition or contests. Some poll or when actually there is an assembly or some gathering, a tribal gathering in the history, they had also some poll. Yeah. Prehistoric, that means belonging to or existing before recorded times. What are recorded times? Recorded times means that we need some kind of cultural tool or something like media to actually record the history. It means writing, letter, script, audio, which is actually a very modern concept, but something like that. That's why prehistoric means that we don't know much. We can only actually just guess that what happened prehistorically in those times. We can guess it from the archaeological sites, from the ruins. We can guess it from some things like tools and objects, but not really from the books or from some media or from some recorded times. So prehistoric is something which existed before actually some evidence what we can study. Primary means of first rank or importance or value. Primary is not really a historical concept, but primary means something first, something which was the first, which is very important, the most important, some highest value, that's primary. So when we actually study something primarily or something is primary in our life, that's the focus where we put our focus. Propaganda. Propaganda is information that is spread to promote some cause. Propaganda is actually, we know this from the communistic times or from other regimes, and they use sometimes, even in Western civilization, they use propaganda to spread the information which don't need to be actually true or 100% true. It can be completely false, but they spread it so much and they actually try to tell the nation and persuade the people to believe in this. So propaganda is not really like a positive term, but it doesn't mean that it's completely actually negative. It is sort of marketing, but more in political or philosophical or in a sociological way. Province is a territory in an administrative district of a nation. So province is a sort of like district or in some territory, that's a province. So usually provinces were in the empires or ancient kingdoms, or they usually had governors or some leaders or as the head of the provinces. So usually they were the part of some bigger units, bigger territorial concepts. Ratification is also a political term. Ratification means making something valid by formally confirming it, acknowledging it. So when I acknowledge, confirm, and officially validate it, making it valid, that's ratification. Usually we can encounter with this term in politics now, because there are many ratifications of some international treaties or contracts or agreements. That's ratification. Reformation means improvement in the condition of institutions or practices. So reformation was very popular during the council in the Christianity, because reformation means something like making it better, reform it, use the reforms and reformate institutions, practices. For instance, in Catholic Church, there was this reformation. You remember when the Christianity was actually somehow like split into two concepts, and then the other concept was a little bit different because they didn't actually agree on something. So it's primarily connected with religion and in these institutions because of the history. But now reformation means also in other areas of life. Refugee is an exile who flees for safety. Refugees and refugee, now very modern in some areas, but refugees were actually as old as the world is, because the refugee is somebody who is fleeing from some territory because of safety, because their beliefs or their religion or their political concept and lifestyle and whole vision and attitude is completely different from the majority. And if there are actually some political attacks and people are not really happy in those territories, they have to leave the country. So there is an exile. So refugee is that person who is actually fleeing from the country because of safety. Republic, a form of government whose head of state is not a monarch. More or less now, especially in Western modern world, we all are having republics because monarchs were in the past. We know that we completely actually changed the system. It's not anymore valid, but monarchs still exist, but they don't have any power because of democracy. And now we are actually electing our leaders and our monarchs. They are not the monarchs, but our leaders. So republic is a modern concept and form of government where is actually leader, somebody who is elected usually. Research, seeking for knowledge. Research is very, very popular in science or in scientific different actually areas, but of course in history. Research, you can actually encounter with that anywhere. Research can be in marketing, in economy, in modern concepts research. So actually seeking for truth, seeking for some data, information, for knowledge in that particular area. Revolution, a single complete turn. Revolution means completely something new, something like overthrow or overturn of one kind of political concept or political direction to the other. A revolution can be also inside of the company, within the company or organization or the institution. Doesn't mean a revolution only on a global scale when we are talking about governments and complete change of the political actually directions. Rural is living in or characteristic of farming or country life. Rural is opposite of urban, and rural means something from countryside, everything what is actually done, produced and made and what is coming from the countryside. And farming, that is actually rural, is coming from Latin. So living and all these conditions, that's rural. Schism is a division of a group into opposing factions. So when there are two groups, what happened, for instance, in Christianity, and schisms means that there is a conflict. They don't understand, so they have to actually split. They have to, in modern concepts, they have to divide something, or people, we have to divorce when there is a schism. So schism is a sort of conflict, basically, yeah. But of course, in a nice way, we can still actually do something with that, and we just split schism. Scribe means someone employed to make written copies of documents. When you are reading history from the ancient Egypt or ancient Mesopotamia or Greece, they all had scribes. These people were usually actually quite educated and on high levels, because scribes were actually sometimes the only people in the village or in the family or in some society when they were able to write or read. So they were able actually to understand the knowledge, which was also in those times very powerful. So they are usually employed, or they were employed as writers, rewriting actually the stuff, and who knew the language and the letters and the stuff. You have to just understand that majority of the ancient world was uneducated. They didn't know how to write or read, and from where in the text. So actually, just the highest level and ranks of the people in education, they were able to write. Secular, someone who is not a clergyman or a professional person. Secular is somebody who is actually just not coming from religious side. Secular is, I think you encounter with that term, secularism, when actually the religion and the church itself is actually completely divided from the society and from the political or social or cultural or any life, and it's not connected and reconnected and whatever. So secular, more or less, Europe is living in secular environment. So that person is not a clergyman or professional person, he's a secular. Secondary, being of a second rank or importance or value. Secondary is something like additional, something which is not the first one, the primary. So it's actually in the rank secondary after the primary. So secondary. Sectionalism, excessive devotion to the interest of a particular region. Sectionalism means that you devote the time, you devote the energy, and you give everything what's possible to some sectors, to some particular region of the interest. So sectionalism, you make sections from something. Segregation, the act of keeping apart. Segregation, I think you encounter with that regarding the segregation in South Africa with apartheid, or in the USA, when the segregation laws were abolished only in 60s, 70s for many, many states in the USA. So segregation, not really nice period of time, when actually the black people were sort of completely segregated and completely put aside from the life and from some facilities and institutions which were actually just focused on white people. I think you can read about that a lot. Segregation, a social contract, an agreement that results in the organization of society. Social contract means that how the society will be organized. So it is usually agreement between the government and foundations or social organizations or the other concepts of some institutions. Socialism is a political theory advocating state ownership of industry. Socialism was actually, and still exists, in Cuba and North Korea, where actually they believe, and there is a huge defense and advocating that the state ownership of the industry and all the sectors is the best. But of course, we found out that not, and socialism is, by my opinion, not really working and will never work a lot. So the state has actually like the primary role and the first power and just state, and they believe that it will be something like equal society and so on and so on. So that's a political theory. Statistics, a branch of mathematics concerned with quantitative data. Statistics is actually one part of mathematics, more or less to say. And now, for instance, because of economy and how we plan and how we try to understand the societies, and especially with now on the planet with so huge number of people, we need statistics a lot. Now, because of pandemic, we need statistics for GDP, we need statistics for number of people, population, for whatever. Like there are so many factors where we need stats. and statistics and good quantitative data. Suffrage, a legal right to vote. Suffrage is, I think this term came from Great Britain, and suffrage legally is this right to vote, is the right to vote. And suffrage was coming from, especially when the women started to have a right to vote, and I think it was made in Great Britain for the first time. Tariff is a government tax on imports or exports. Tariff means that what will be the percentage and then the ratio of the tax for imports or exports. Tariff. Technology, the practical application of science to commerce or industry. So technology means that what will be actually scientific application and how we can use it, actually, when all this research and all these results of research from science to normal life, to industry, to commerce, business. Theocracy, a political unit governed by a deity. Theocracy is, it was actually quite popular and quite, I would say that it was a part of history when a deity was the most important and primary source of power, and deity was represented usually by monarchs, kings, pharaohs, by actually the leaders of society. So theocracy, it's coming from the deity, they believed in the gods. Totalitarianism, a form of government in which the rule is unconstrained. Totalitarianism is actually a communistic system or socialistic system, we can say, because the ruler or the leader or the government or even monarchy has this kind of unconstrained power. Nobody can actually just get rid of the powers of authoritarian or totalitarian leader. Tribe, a group of people with shared ancestry and customs. Basically, we were all coming from some tribes. We know Slavs, we know Celts, we know Saxons, we know a lot of different tribes which still exist, for instance, in Africa or in Latin America. But, of course, these tribes were more or less than in modern societies and in Middle Ages and even before, were somehow made into the countries and states and some political institutionalism. And tribune, an ancient Roman official elected by the plebeians. Tribune was actually this official who was elected in ancient Rome by plebeians, so people, the population. Plebeians were the people who had the rights to vote. Plebeians were people, the folks, But be careful, because in ancient Rome or in ancient Greece, a lot of people believed that the first democracy, just 20 or maybe 30% of the people in ancient Rome had the right to vote, so they were plebeians. Usually you need to have the property, being a little bit rich, so no slaves, not to women, of course, they didn't have any rights to vote. So be careful of how we understand the concept of democracy from the ancient Rome and ancient Greece. That's a tribune. And then tyranny, government in which the ruler is an absolute dictator. So tyranny, well, in the past, I think some periods of time in ancient Rome, there were actually like tyrannies, because tyranny was absolutism, absolute dictators. And I think that some Caesars were this style. Ottoman empires, or emperors, Ottoman actually sultans were sometimes tyrannies. So it means that it doesn't mean that it was a political concept forever, but there were periods of times when tyranny was as the government, because it was. I think that a lot of people understand some names from the Roman Caesars or Ottoman sultans when there was a tyranny involved. Urban, opposite of rural, urban relating to a city or densely populated area. So everything was happening, produced, done, or transformed or amended in cities, that's actually urban. So urbanization or urban, that's the process how we develop cities. A veto is a vote that blocks a decision. So what is blocking decision? And I think there is a veto right, usually the head of some company or the head of the state or the head of the parliament, or sometimes in some systems there is a veto right. So one person or some group of the people have the veto. So veto means that we can just block the decision of all the other people because we don't agree on that. So also veto is coming from the legal term. And the last one is zealot, a very strange term. A zealot, a member of an ancient Jewish sect in Judea in the 1st century who fought to the death against the Romans and who killed or persecuted the Jews who collaborated with the Romans. Zealot is a special word, and now we use it for somebody who is actually like complete religious fanatic, usually religious. So zealot is sometimes connected, but it's coming from this history as I just read it. But now when we say that somebody is zealot, it means that completely like but fanatically crazy about something. So that's usually it's connected with religion, yeah. So usually it's a huge fanatic, huge, even bigot fanatic, yeah. Eager to do something, or some kind of like follower, but not even follower. Followers are actually just, that's a positive term, but zealot is a little negative. So zealot, and it's coming from quite interesting story that it was in Judea in the 1st century who fought to the death. So they were able to fight to the death against the Romans to actually protect the territory against the Romans, and who killed or persecuted Jews who collaborated with the Romans. So we know in all the wars, actually, there were people always collaborating with the other enemy party, like it happened in Poland, Slovakia, Czech Republic during the Second World War. It happened also in the ancient Judea, and this person, zealot, is coming from that. So interesting. I think that it is enough, and I finished with this history vocab. It is a little bit longer video, but I hope that you will have now more times, maybe because of the weather, which is actually getting worse and worse. But just take some time to understand this, and maybe play this video more times to understand some vocab, and maybe go back to something which is of your interest, and you just now realize that, this is an interesting topic and I can read more about this. Thank you very much. See you next time.